My name is Radu with TIGI, and I'm here to show you guys a short clipper technique on my model Nolan today. As far as the approach goes on this haircut, we're going to work with the horseshoe section from recession to recession, just dropping below the crown area. Establishing our graduation, working with our 1.5 guard down all the way to a no guard, creating a slight diagonal back weight line through this haircut. Today I'm going to use our Salty Not Sorry salt spray as well as our pure texture paste as both finishing and prepping products in the hair. It's really crucial that we prep the hair for us to really get that final result that I'm looking for. We are working with a type 4 curl. You want to keep moisture and a lot of nourishment to this type of hair because, again, it does suck up moisture and it needs a lot of definition at the same time. Kind of almost start to prep the top section, combining some water with our Ego Boost leave-in, which is a really great leave-in conditioner that's going to help nourish at the same time, start to bring that curl alive again. I'm also going to cocktail another product in here, our Salty Not Sorry salt spray. And again, this is just going to give me a little bit more definition and a little bit more movement into that curl. So just going through, giving it a little bit of spray all around, getting that product in there, and letting it just start to dry through as I'm going to work with my technique underneath. Just going to scrunch it in here a little bit, just to let that product saturate the hair really well and work that through. Sectioning is going to be a really key part of this haircut because, again, when you're working with a men's technique, the idea is that you're working with clippers underneath and usually working with some form of layering or some form of freehand technique through the top. So sectioning is going to be really key. I'm going to work with a horseshoe section all the way through from recession to recession. And again, where I'm going to change this is I'm going to work with a slight diagonal back, encompassing the horseshoe from underneath at the crown area, which is going to give me sort of a really cool profile that's going to slightly drop in the crown area to build a little bit more weight back here for this particular look. Again, the idea is when you're working with your clippers on type 4 curl, you kind of want to really get a nice smooth surface to work with, because I think that's essential because you want to see where the weight line sits and where I need to go with the clipper, heavier handed or not, to blend out my weight lines. Working with dark hair, it's nice to have a white comb because I can really see where my weight starts to build, or if I'm working with a clipper over comb or scissor over comb, it really lets me see where my guides are once I'm working through this hair. The reason a horseshoe sectioning works really well because it will sit at the round of the head where I need to build up my graduation to. When you're working with a classic fade or a taper on the short men's haircut, essentially it's a graduation. So it works from short up to long, and it increases in length. So when you look at a classic shape, you want to see a profile that slightly builds up in weight. Putting that horseshoe section right on the round of the head will automatically help me create this nice section to give me that graduation that I'm looking for right away. Couple of key points here. I need to establish myself a length that I know where I'm going to work up to and at from. And at that point, I'm just going to connect the dots together. The nice thing with this particular approach is that you can work through this haircut quite fast and get a really nice strong shape in there really quick. Body positioning becomes key at this point at the same time. I'm going to actually get my model to slightly tip the head away from me because if I'm working with a straight up and down motion with my clipper, it's going to build that graduation in there for me automatically really fast. So I am going to work with the 1.5 guard. That's going to be my final length that I'm going to work up to. And then I'm going to go into it much tighter with a no guard underneath to create my shortest length. And I'm going to work in a manner where I'm just going to essentially test the waters and see how this is cutting the hair. At the same time, what I'm going to do is I'm going to listen to how my clipper is cutting because it's going to tell me whether this guard is too long and it's not taking much hair off. At that point, I can switch down to a shorter guard. So I have my guard closed at this point, and I'm just coming through, working from front to back, keeping a consistency to the technique as far as not opening or closing the guard. The more arm movement you create, the more you're creating the shape. When you're working with just the wrist, what's happening is you're working with more detailed work. So working with the wrist is going to give you shorter movements, which means that I can create the shape where I want it to sit. And then I'm going to turn around and I'm going to approach it from the other side. And again, same thing here. I'm going to work from front to back, right to the middle. And again, I'm not going right down to the perimeter because I know I'm going to come in here with a much shorter length, so I don't need to fuss with that bottom part. The idea is to create this shape where my graduation is going to sit. Now also how you hold your clipper will determine on how weight lines are going to sit. I like to work with slide diagonals when I work with my clippers because again what that's going to create is a more seamless effect as I'm cutting into the hair. And because on the other side I work diagonal back with my clipper, I'm going to do the exact same approach on this side, work diagonal back. It's all about the consistency of working with the clipper. Okay. So now, I'm kind of just going to leave this corner alone right now. I will come back through there, blend a little bit more further afterwards. What my main goal is going to be right now is creating my shortest length so I can connect into my longer length. Also, as you guys can see, we're dealing with some facial hair. I'm going to show you guys a couple quick tips that you can really define the beard line and just kind of really bring the whole haircut together. Because again, it's about those small little details when you work with men's hair. So I've taken the guard off. I'm gonna go with a no guard. I'm gonna have my clipper closed, and I'm gonna create myself a weight line that's gonna mimic where my horseshoe section sat. So it's gonna be at a diagonal back. So I'm gonna create that, and my starting point is gonna be just above the ear, because again, I have facial hair that I need to deal with, and I need a little bit of transition zone. So once we have established our graduation underneath our horseshoe, I'm gonna come through, create my shortest length, mimicking that horseshoe section, working parallel. I'm gonna connect my shortest to my longest, building my graduation. My point of reference, where I'm starting from, is gonna be my low recession. And that's what's gonna tell me where my guide from one side to the other will be. Same thing, approaching the other side, low recession as my guide, and working diagonally back to connect. Once I'm happy with that guide I've cut, I'm gonna approach blending the graduation by working my way from longest into my shortest. My number one guard at an open position. And again, at this point, I'm gonna flick using my wrist movement to help me start blending into my graduation. I prefer to work this way because it keeps my weight line where I need it to sit, working from long to short. Once I'm done from one side to the middle, come to the other side, same thing, work from front to back. Sometimes not necessarily working with the full blade, but just with the corners to give it more detailed work. Once I've worked from one side to the other into the middle, this is where now I start to switch over to my next guard, coming in with my half guard, again, opening up slightly and starting from my one side to the next. Again, also listening to the clipper, because it's telling me whether I need to close it or I just need to take the guard off. So I'm gonna close the clipper all the way. Again, checking all your angles, step back and look at making sure where the shadows are sitting. If I need to further take some away, I will come back in and do my little detail work. At this point, I'm gonna come through, blend out my transition zone, which is at the round of the head. I'm gonna eliminate a little bit of this extra length, a little bit extra weight through here by coming through and working with a scissor over comb technique. Help me blend my transition into my top. Scissor over comb is a more controlled technique because the clipper cuts so fast. This gives me a little bit more control of knowing exactly how much hair I'm taking off at one time. I'm gonna work same thing with my comb at a diagonal position, coming through and just working that 45 constantly all the way through. So I retain that graduation instead of taking my comb and working to the round of the head. So before approaching the top, I'm actually gonna deal with the facial hair, start to blend out this transitional zone, and also tidy up the perimeter lines on the beard. Your beard transition happens from the top of the ear till about the bottom of the ear. So I'm gonna use my half guard, slightly open, and I'm gonna work from about mid-ear into that short piece. I'm gonna stretch the skin, slightly open the clipper, close it as I come up higher. Once that's done, I'm gonna come back in with my trimmers and really detail that beard line on the perimeters. Top of the beard will sit from this point of the ear to about the corner of the mouth. Again, I'm just gonna come back with my trimmers backwards, press down. Same thing on the other side. Also detailing the front hairline, give it a little bit more strength. Just coming through, cleaning up the neckline, working with the trimmers backwards, and fanning into that shortest length to create a really nice, soft, natural hairline all the way through. At this point, I'm going to work some of our pure texture paste through this hair. I'm going to work a slight bit through my hands and just come through and scrunch it in to create some visual texture. And then I'm going to come through and I'm going to blast this quickly with a little bit of heat, using my diffuser to start to make that curl bounce up a little bit more and let that top part dry out further. One little detail I want to do is I want to come through to further create some texture through the top. I can go through with some random pieces, come through and do a slight twist cutting technique randomly throughout, stretching the hair, remembering that the hair shrinks a lot, so I'm just going to work through the top section. Again, this is the part of the haircut where it becomes a little bit more visual. It's going to add a little bit more of this salt spray, just to add a little bit of dampness back in the hair, and I'm just going to let it dry in its natural state. Here's my finished look. As far as the technique, what I did was working with the horseshoe section from recession to recession, dropping slightly below the crown area, building graduation using my 1.5 guard, and working all the way down to a no guard, creating a short to long length all the way through. As far as the facial hair, we made the transition from shortest into the beard line, using my half guard to transition my beard from my shortest into my beard line. Transition zone being top of the ear to about bottom of the ear, working from the corner of the lip to the ear, and coming back with my trimmer, creating that strong line all the way through.